What is going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome back once again, y'all. As we are live once again, only 3 days removed from our Tuffy Talk live show, and we are back once again as we decided to change up a little bit. Instead of going the episode route, we say, you know what? Let's go to live stream route again. We always have fun doing these things, and especially when we have a special guest on with us once again. Has been on with us a couple of times now. Scott Wood, obviously former NC State men's basketball player, and you could check him and Joe Giglio out on the Law of the Wolf YouTube channel / podcast, which is awesome. It's always a fun listen for sure. I guess I'll ask you this first, guy. Did you ever imagine you and Joe Giglio as being must-watch TV in terms of your personalities, man? It's a great mesh. I'll say that myself.
I wouldn't call it that. I think the one thing that you get is he's very negative, and I'm usually try to keep it pretty positive. So
yeah,
I guess the nice part is he has no problem getting really down on the Pack, and I have no problem trying to keep the positive vibes going, even if they're not playing too well.
Yeah, no, well, absolutely. Well, and then and don't worry, as obviously since we are coming off of a dominant win for in-state women's basketball over Notre Dame, we'll talk about the good first, and then taper off with the not as great. I won't say bad, but just not as great. So with the men's side, but with that being said, Wolfpack Nation, if you're in here with us, you know the drill. But if you haven't, once again, any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns you got, make sure to put them in the chat, and we will touch on them here tonight with Scott himself. But with that being said, obviously a phenomenal showing to say the least from the in-state women. Did not honestly fully expect this with the news that Mimi Collins was going to be out tonight. But with that being said, it did not hold them back whatsoever as they come out with a 59-43 win in South Bend, Indiana, and was just an absolute defensive masterclass. I know that everybody going into this game was really talking a lot about this freshman phenom for Notre Dame, and I'm pulling up the box score right now because it for some reason went away from me. But it honestly was very exciting to see, and also too, even building on top of it, how we had 4 different players with double-digit scoring. So Scott, the biggest thing which I love about this team, man, is really that it's an all-around team. This is a team that if you were to look up the definition of a team that knows their role, I feel like that's got to be the in-state 2023-2024 team. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway is you don't really have a lapse in any category. Madison shooting 45-46% from 3. You've got, I call it River and Rivers, that two head combo. You got one that can rebound and be a dominant in the post, and you have another one that basically, if you tell her to defend the best player, you tell her to be the best passer, you tell her to be the scorer, she can do it all. So I just think they have so many options, and again, that they understand that there's going to be little sacrifices here and there, but it's for the betterment of the team, and all of them have bought in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just like everybody's asking in the comments in terms of updates on Mimi, and all that we've heard before the game was that it is not long term, that she was actually a game time decision. So which is great news for sure to hear.
Westmore said in the pregame, nothing structural, bad contusion or bone bruise. So not too long. She shouldn't be out.
Cool. Yeah. And especially now, with the standings, I think that the goal right now for women, for in-state women is, just to keep building off that resume, try and make a case for, a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But even more importantly, and just more short term, just holding on to a top 4 seed for the ACC tournament, getting that double bye. And now with them beating Notre Dame, who was fighting for that 4 spot, now they are only 1 game back from the number one spot, Virginia Tech, and now they're a full game ahead of Duke and FSU, who are also battling for that top 4 seed. But Scott, I want to kind of read this one tweet right here, talking about my favorite player, Madison Hayes. That she's having a career year this year, 61% TS percentage, top 10 ACC for offensive and defensive win shares. The only Power Fives in conference play was 6+ rebounds per game, 40% three percentage. So it's basically just her and Madison Hayes that are able to have, again, that 6 rebounds per game and 40% 3-point percentage per game as well. So, and it's to me, this has really kind of been not necessarily a breakout, but I think that every single year with Madison Hayes, you've seen her get better and better. And I mean, because she's really effective in every single spot on the court. You know, she can rebound, she can play defense with grit, she can get to the basket, she can shoot the three. Again, I mean, they just another just kind of, I think, just feather in the cap really for Westmore. Again, that all around player. And because I can even say the same thing about Sanaya Rivers a little bit too. But loving what I'm seeing from Madison Hayes so far this season.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously, you can talk about the shooting, shooting high percentage, really good from three, but she brings so much other stuff to the game. And I think that's even when I'm working out with kids around here or having conversations with kids is, look, you could be, a pro or an expert at something. So in this case, shooting 45, 46% from three. But
Yep.
if you do have an off night, what else can you bring to the table? And I think for each one of these ladies on this team is, yeah, they are an expert at something, but they also, if that is not clicking for them, they bring a lot of other things. And I think that's
Mhm.
ultimately what makes this team so special is that, each of them brings something. Even if each of them have an off night, guess what? There's something else that they bring to the table.
Yep.
Now you almost got, it almost kind of reminds me in a way. I'm looking at it 3, 4, 5. You got 6 almost averaging double figures. Uh,
Mhm.
my Sweet 16 team, we had 5 or 6 that were right at the double figure mark. It's
Mhm.
hard to scout when you
Mhm.
have, your 6 man can come off the bench and all of a sudden have, 17 points. So again,
Yep.
I think it's just kudos to Wes for the ladies that he's brought in. It takes a lot of research to do this, whether it's with the portal or whether it's recruiting through high school. But it's just a good group put together that meshes and plays the game the right way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, kind of getting a little ahead of myself here, but I think that unfortunately that's kind of a little bit of what's I think causing a little bit of the frustration with Keats is that right now you're seeing in what I would call, I mean, a master class of an offseason by Wes Moore. And did I freeze?
No, you're good.
You're still rolling with me.
Oops. Yep. You guys got me now?
Yeah.
You guys got me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, y'all. Sorry about that. But anyway, like I was saying, so like I think that's causing a little bit of frustration is that I mean you're really seeing why Wes Moore is in my opinion, one of the top 5 coaches in women's college basketball right now because he really looked at his team during this offseason after a just horrendous season last year compared to what we normally expect from an NC State women's basketball program. And yeah, I mean, like, because it wasn't necessarily even a huge overhaul. Like, it's not like we just like wiped the slate clean, like got rid of everybody and just started from square one. Like, no, I mean, there's not really a lot of transfers here. It's a lot of returning players, some freshmen, with Zoe Brooks and Lacey Steele, but then just like a sprinkle, of some transfers, but like just a great job overall. And so kudos to Wes Moore. Can't say enough about him. So, but it was kind of funny, Scott. We brought up the question earlier in terms of would you say that Wes Moore is knocking on the door of all-time greatest women's basketball coach NC State? And I feel like that we basically our response was I think even Wes Moore would say like no, you can't say me over Kay Yao, even though I mean resume wise, I mean you're I mean, it's definitely making the case there, but obviously Kay Yao with all she's done, all she, has built this program up to be, you can't, it's hard to do that, but there's no doubt that Wes Moore, in my opinion, has solidified himself as one of the elite coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Yeah, no, that's without a doubt. And I think he would say the same thing. Look, Kay's done so much for the game. I remember coming on a visit, and we went to I can't even think of the food hall. It wasn't Case, but it was right over there. And one of the first people that Sydney Lowe introduced me to was her, just because of how influential she is, not only for the women's game but basketball as a whole. Like even I, growing up, know who Kay Yao was, like a kid in Indiana, coming down and you see her and it's almost like, okay, I'm somewhat in awe. So I 100% think that, he is 100% okay being second on that list,
Yeah, I agree.
regardless of what happens for the rest of his tenure at NC State. But even in today's game, with all the things that have changed, whether it's NIL, whether it's transfer portal, he has been able to adjust and adapt. And I think that's a big piece to it. A lot of, even on the men's side, you look at it, a lot of them has just kind of, said, what, I'm going to phase out. This isn't for me, which is fine. And I understand it. But, he has kind of looked at it as, it's just the new challenge. How can I kind of figure all this thing out and still put together an elite level team that can compete to win ACC championships and ultimately try to win a national championship?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think right now, looking at rest of the season now for NC State, you look at the schedule that's left here. So they're back at home against Georgia Tech on Sunday. Then they go to the big gym at UNC, and then they go to Duke, and then they wrap it up at home against Syracuse. Which, I mean, Syracuse has definitely been a surprise this season for sure. With their new head coach, they've really turned it around this season. Again, that right now number 2 in the ACC right now. But it was funny. Michael and I were literally talking on Monday about how like the women's tournament this year is going to be, I think, a fun one to watch. I mean, obviously, NC State's lost both games to Virginia Tech, which I'm saying, hey, if that means we can win the third one in the ACC tournament, then I'll live with it. But then again, you got Syracuse, you got NC State, Louisville, Duke, FSU, UNC, Notre Dame, that in my opinion all can make some noise. So, I mean, how confident would you say you are in terms of us getting back on the top box in the ACC tournament this year?
I think a lot of it kind of depends on the seeding and where everything is at. Shout out to Emily Tassler. I had a conversation with her, former women's basketball player, about the Virginia Tech just having their number. And I would also say that basketball is a game of matchup. I don't know if necessarily Virginia Tech is the greatest matchup. So a lot of it, I think, comes down to the seeding. I would also say it is very difficult to beat a team 3 times throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
But again, matchups, like our teams never matched up well with Carolina. They had agile bigs that could move, but we could beat Duke like a drum because they had slow, big lugs down low. So it was a good matchup for us. So
yeah,
I think a lot of it comes down to, who you pull, who you're pulling at the time. A lot of these teams may get hot down the stretch. A lot of these teams may, check out and say, what, we're just ready to get this season over with. So a lot of it just really does. It comes down to the seeding, comes down to who's playing well at the right moment, comes down to injuries, who's healthy, who's not healthy. So there's still a lot of season left that's going to play out before you can really try to figure out who can pull that off coming down the stretch in March.
Yeah. And looking at some of the comments here, Nick and a couple people talking about Maddie Cox and seeing her get, I think it was 18 minutes tonight. So getting her more involved with the injury of Mimi Collins. But again, I think the biggest thing, I mean, with her being a freshman, Lacey Steele being a freshman, Zoe Brooks being a freshman, like it's honestly a beautiful thing that I'm looking at this team. I mean, feeling good that even after, like, if this is Mimi Collins' last go around, Sanaya Rivers, will more likely come back. Madison Hayes can come back. Like, I'm looking at next year, going, hey, let's do it again. Now, I mean, I'm not by no means moving on from this year, but I mean, it's just exciting to know that it's not like this is like, all right, this is going to be our best shot, and then next year we might have to see what we can do in the transfer portal. Like, hey, let's do it again for next year. But I mean, how exciting would you, I guess Zoe Brooks, in my opinion, would be the freshman that stands out to you the most. Would you agree with that, Scott, of the freshmen?
Yeah, but I think too, let's not get ahead of our skis, man. With the transfer portal and everything that happens, like you never can tell. I mean,
that's true.
All it takes is someone to dangle a carrot in front of one of these kids, and all of a sudden they're going. You know what I mean? So it's just I'm trying to just enjoy the moment. I'm trying to enjoy a team that was not thought of or thought highly of at the beginning of the season, and they've absolutely just proved everybody wrong. Now, again, there's a lot of season left, and they want to continue to prove the doubters wrong and still have that chip on their shoulder. But, just making the most of the opportunity that they have this year with a really good team, great players, great coaching staff, and see how it all plays out. Because, again, you never know what happens once the season ends, and all of a sudden, it could be a team from down south that's just like, oh, you would be a good piece for, you know what I mean? And all it takes is one person to make a good, bad decision and take off.
It's sad that we're at that point, right, Scott? But you're right, though. You're
Listen,
right.
I tell everybody. I said it on Law to Wolf. It's semi-professional basketball. It's semi-pro football. It's just like it, hate it.
That's what it is.
It's just what it is. I mean, if you got if you love NC State and truly love NC State, you know what? You just got to kind of wrap your head around it and still pull for them.
Amen.
Yeah, and regardless of how your personal feelings on it, like as long as you embrace it, because you can lose people, but you can also get players out of the portal too to help improve your team. So
I use the example. I guarantee if you had CJ Leslie on the podcast and the year I graduate, you got CJ Zoe that enter their name and go professionally. I think CJ goes in the second round. Lorenzo doesn't. Now they both ended up carving out really good professional careers for themselves. But if money's involved, do they stay? And then you've got, I think, Trevor Lacey, Ralston Turner, CJ, Lorenzo all coming back. I mean, that could have been a very scary team to see. So I think it kind of goes both ways. That's why Armando's still sitting there and he hasn't, taken off. Same thing with, a few others within college basketball. So you get to see some of your favorites with, all throughout college basketball stay maybe a little longer because of it.
And the Zach Edey, the Purdue center. That has to be, because there's like that dude's got NBA written. That dude's got NBA written all over him, man. So, but yeah. So somebody also too. There have a couple mentions about the UNC game, saying it would be great to see more red than blue in the big gym at UNC. And so I do want to ask you, not necessarily get into a whole push and shoving thing, but I just want to ask from a former basketball player perspective, do you think what Banghurt's doing is just stirring the pot? You think that's all it is, just stirring the pot? Just
100%. But it's also like she hasn't had the best of luck against NC State. Let's just put it out there. But let's also understand that Wes, Duke, Wake, they're trying to recruit this territory. They're trying to get some of the same players. So I think it's her, trying to also not back down and say, you know what, like we're a really good team too. And she downplays a lot of things, as do a lot of people within the rivalry. So it'd look a lot worse if she was sitting there just hyping them up the whole time. And, NC State's great. Because then all of a sudden when a recruit hops on social media and sees that she's just, NC State's the best thing, why would I ever go to Carolina? So I think, again, a lot of it's kind of that rah-rah, just, table talk that, they're trying to get recruits and they want, people not to look at it as, they're getting blown out every single time or getting beat every single time. So it's just fuel to the fire, man. A little bit more, probably not even fuel. It's more like diesel fuel or something.
Oh yeah. No, I just want to spend 2 seconds on that just because I really was curious your thoughts on it, because I'm sitting there like I don't know why even after we beat them that
I didn't mind it the first time, like, okay, you said it, live with it, like that's you. But now that you've gotten punched in the mouth a couple times, it's like, all right, let's just drop it. And honestly, again, kudos to Wes because if I was a head coach, I'd be laying into it. I'd absolutely be giving it to him. But so props to him for staying humble and hungry and not worrying about the outside noise.
It's a lot easier to do that when you just are winning all the time.
That's right.
I mean, what is her record since she's came there
against State?
Well, she hasn't won in Reynolds. I think she's won twice in Carmichael. So probably 2-8 overall.
2-8 overall.
Yeah, and then they don't even sell out their own. I mean, just none of it that she says makes sense. But
Well, especially not tonight with all those pictures. I don't know if you've seen, Scott, all the pictures of their game against Pitt tonight, but it is, man, maybe a quarter full, maybe. Like it's pretty bad. So
Well,
anyway,
I
though.
know. I mean, maybe they could play at Broughton or something. That might be better size for them. They'll go to Broughton, or there's a couple high schools that they could probably sell out.
Ooh, I love it, Scott. I love it. Stirring the pot, baby. Let's go. I love it. All right, sick. All right, so now I'm bringing it back to NC State now. So like, tell me, Scott. If NC State were to win a championship this year, ACC, they were to go Final Four, whatever that may be, what is the one thing that means that they did really well at? Or let's start there. What's the one thing you would say they did really well at?
And it's actually, it's not even a talent thing or skill thing. I'm just going to say continue to stay healthy. I think the big thing, and again, I think you're seeing it with, some players that haven't necessarily been getting minutes, being able to get some minutes and be tested, which will help them in the grand scheme of things. But, when somebody goes down, it throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into the system. Somebody has to step up and do a little bit more, which they may not necessarily be comfortable with right now. But I think the big thing is just continuously staying healthy. I think they have really, really good pieces that, like we said, roles that stay in their lane. They do things at a high level. And when they aren't doing those things at a high level, they can still bring something else to the table to make the team find some success. And I think, just continuously trying to stay healthy, playing high level basketball at the right time is what this team needs going down the stretch.
Yep. And by the way, too, Caitlin Clark just broke the Division I scoring record. By the way, just popped up on my phone here. But kind of looking at what's the weakness of this team? Like I feel like that really just boils down to the times that we have faced an elite center. That's been the time. That's been the time where it's got to us.
Yeah, and I think that's why Virginia Tech poses somewhat of an issue. Now, I mean, you look across college basketball, especially women as a whole, which I don't necessarily am going to claim to be an expert at it. But there are probably, 5 or 6 teams that you could look at and be like, that center is going to give us some problems. Now, like they beat Colorado earlier in the year and they had a really good big, and we handled it well. So again, I think a lot of it just kind of comes down to the matchups. As long as they don't put us in Connecticut next to a UConn or something crazy, we should be okay with most matchups that they'll bring. But again, I've always said that, if you have a high level basketball team, it's going to come down to matchups. How well do you match up against the person next to you? And can you handle, a little bit of adversity, because they're going to face it. They're going to face it coming down the stretch. And they're facing it now with some injuries. So being able to handle that when your back's against the wall and still play hard.
Well, and let's be real, Sky. I mean, in my opinion, even though they're tied right now with Tennessee right now, but I'm sure they'll squeak it out. South Carolina's team to beat right now. I mean, they're every single time they've had a tough opportunity going to LSU, facing UConn, they've shown up, and especially too against us. I mean, they have a lot of bigs. They have a lot of bigs, a lot of really talented bigs. So, so like that's one that screams out to me of that. If we face them, I'm not feeling great, but I'm also saying I'm not scared of them though either. Like I said.
No, and I don't think it's the same with Virginia Tech. I don't think anybody's scared of Virginia Tech. I think you make a couple shots here and get a couple stops there. All of a sudden, you could very easily be 2-0 against them. So, again, I just think a lot of it kind of comes down to that, especially when you get to the big NCAA tournament. Dude, South Carolina could be all the way across the bracket, and they could find a matchup that does not suit them well, and all of a sudden they're out of it before they even get to NC State. So, again, there's a lot of hypotheticals. I feel like this team is really, really good. They're well suited to make deep runs in tournaments because of how well each person plays their role. They can score the ball with anybody. They can defend their tails off. They do have really good size, so they're going to be just fine. Again, just continuously trying to stay hungry and stay humble and keep working.
Yep. Amen. So that's pretty much Michael. Any last thoughts here on women's, man?
Well, I was just thinking about the question you asked, and it's getting really nitpicky because it is such a good team. But there's been a couple games where we've struggled to close out. Well, Virginia Tech Virginia Tech is the one that comes to mind. You know, he went on a
Sure.
6-minute scoring drought in the fourth quarter. And you just can't do that, especially against elite teams like Virginia Tech. And then there's been a couple
Hold
other
on, we're
games.
still talking about women's basketball, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure we didn't switch over. Just making sure.
No. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. A little bit there, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but one game, one game.
And I'll tell you, I feel like Zanaya Rivers is a closer. She may not even be the leading scorer, but she just knows how to make the right plays when the ball's in her hand. And I think that's the one nice thing you have going down. I've said it even when I was commentating the men's game. Like, who's going to be able to close you out of game? You got to have people down a stretch when you're under 3 minutes, under 2 minutes, that you can put the ball in their hands and say, hey, I need you to go make a play. It's not me drawing up an elite level set, which, can happen sometimes, but it's also as simple as I need you to beat your defender and go create for yourself or someone else. And I think, Rivers brings that for them. And then they've got others that just, shoot the leather off the ball and can help whenever she needs help. So I think that piece, again, droughts happen in college basketball without a doubt. But I think they got enough playmaking that they should be fine to kind of alleviate some of those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Hunter saying, his concern is the lack of speed in our bigs, which
not many people have speedy bigs.
It could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's I think
worse.
a lot of that. I think back to the UConn game when Paige was coming off the high pick and roll, and we were a little bit lower, and he made the adjustment the next time they saw him to be able to guard. And I think that's the nice part with Rivers is when you do have elite level point guard and big like South Carolina will have when they're running a bunch of high pick and rolls and you have a slower big. I think Zanaya kind of alleviates a lot of that because of how well she can defend the ball. She can get around screens, and then the big isn't as such a big piece, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah. And to your point about having Zanaya also being the playmaker in that Virginia Tech game, I mean, she did hit that like reverse layup that gave State the lead, and then obviously Kitley hit the buzzer beater. But
I mean that's again, you make 2 extra shots, 2 stops, and the game goes a completely different way.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so want to switch on over. Yep, I'm back. Hey, Michael, you got this, baby. You keep this thing rolling. Even internet struggles.
Yeah.
But want to switch over now because you'd mentioned Scott. You got to have closers. You got to have those guys to finish games. I mean, am I wrong to say we just don't have one on the men's? Right now we just don't, man. We don't have a finisher.
I'd say no, but this is where I think you got to be a little bit, unique. And on the last Alder Wolf, I wouldn't say it's critical, but I did make the point to where this is where if I was Kevin Keats and I'm not the coach, so this is just me looking as a fan now, you got to put the right guys in the right situation to have success. For example, DJ Burns, I'd play him 3 straight minutes. After that, he could sit his tail on the bench for 3 to get a rest. But when he's in for 3, I'm giving him the ball every single time, and I want him to score. So if he plays 15 minutes, I'm looking to get 17 points out of him. The next step is I'm not going to press with him on the court because he's my last line of defense. At halftime, it almost looks goofy when they're getting down there getting easy buckets because he's got to guard 2 guys. So, DJ Horn is probably your best ball screen, facilitator. He I would get in ball screens, but I don't know if, Jaden kinda, Michael O'Connell kinda, but I don't really necessarily need Casey Morcell coming off a ball screen. So it's just starting to get these guys, very similar to what we talked with the women. You got to put them back in their lane. And it's not put them in a box per se, but we got to understand what are we good at. We need Casey to be able to shoot at a very, very high level. Maybe that's bringing them off down screen, some pin down actions. Outside of their under out of bounds play where they bring them off that same screen that they run almost every single time. That's really the only down screen play that they play that has action to get a shot outside of the one where DJ sets the screen just to throw it to him in the low post. So, again, I just think they got to find a couple more unique ways to put these guys in the right lanes to find a little bit more success. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not, I don't think they have, and we can all agree, we don't have the Jarkels and the Quavions, the just phenomenally offensively gifted players. But I think we have capable enough guys that can score the basketball. It's just not necessarily going to be, hey, you got to take this guy off the bounce and go one-on-one. I don't think they have that. And that's okay. But we got to find an area that they can start to create some advantage and get some baskets.
Yeah. Well, and I think this kind of is a question where, again, at some point we'll move the rest of the season, but right now my mind's more of what we've seen so far. But the one thing I do want to ask you, Scott, is, I mean, would you say that what we have seen so far this season, with the fact that we don't necessarily have that finisher, that looking back, if you're Keats, you say maybe I should have done things a little differently in the offseason, maybe more invested in going after that guy, that finisher guy, instead of having 15 players you could play in rotation? I know hindsight 2020, but
and I will say this: I think Jaden Taylor averaged almost 13 at Butler. You've got DJ Horn, who's one of their main scorers, coming from Arizona State. I think you think Casey Morsell is going to emerge. Obviously, we saw what DJ did towards the end of the year. So I think, again, I think some of the scoring is there. Now, did it necessarily all translate to the ACC? No. I think DJ is he's got the floaties on, and everybody else is kind of sinking right now. So he's trying to drag them back up. But again, it just hasn't necessarily translated to what I think they fully expected. But again, I think there are some pieces there. I truly do. It's just trying to get them in the right situations to have success.
Well, and talk to me about my guy, Casey Morsell, Scott. Like this, like my dude. I mean, I've texted him every so often, man, just to totally have huge respect for that guy. And just like you said, I mean, I fully expected him to have a breakout season this year. Now seeing that, Big T and Jarkel have moved on, like, okay, this is going to be the year where Casey's breaks out. And I mean, he's averaging 11.8 points, which is exactly the amount of points he averaged last year, while playing about the same minutes he has last year. But I mean, I'm looking at last year, he shot 41% from three. This year, he's 29% from three.
His efficiency is way down.
Way down.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Look, Casey's the first one in the gym, last one to leave. He's one of the hardest workers that I've seen there. So I'm with you. I want to see him, really break out. Now, he's had some very, very good games this year, and then he struggled at times. But I also think that, while we were expecting him to make a jump, he also had T and Jarkel that just grabbed so much attention. So it was very easy for him to kind of sit there, spot up, take open looks. I always, I always said, especially even when I was playing, it's easy when you have a lot of really good guys around you. Now, if I didn't have the Lorenzo Browns, the CJs of the world, you're going to get guarded a whole lot different. Now, I still had guys guarding me in my britches at times.
I was going to say, I was like,
there's no doubt. But now he's also, being guarded a little bit different. He shot 41% from three. They're staying home a little bit more because they also know that there's real no threat to finish like T and Jarkel. They don't have those elite scorers. But, I think also, and I've told him this as well, I said, do what you do. You're a really good shooter. You got to get shots up. And I think at times right now he's hunting to do more instead of, take that shot. Just take that open three instead of, necessarily putting the ball on the floor to when you catch it. So, listen, I think, all of them are probably fighting a little bit of demons right now with how the season's going, but there's no doubt in my mind he's a great shooter. He's a great player. We just got to kind of continue to instill some confidence within him. And the same thing, like I said, just, do what you do. When you catch that ball, let it fly. Don't overthink it and try to put the ball on the floor all the time. You're more than capable. That's not what we're saying, but you're getting paid the big bucks to shoot those threes.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and another topic which has really come up a lot recently, guys. I mean, even DJ Burns posting videos of plays where he's gotten basically almost slapped in the face while he's trying to attempt a layup, and there's no doubt that, and I know this, that there's reputations that players have, in terms of that they're that they're known to do these things, attempt these moves, things like that. But the way that DJ Burns has gotten, refereed last year compared to this year is literally night and day. It is literally like, I feel like with DJ last year, like every single time DJ touched the ball, a whistle was blown, whether it was against him or against the guy that was guarding him. This year, I feel like every single time he's touched the ball, like it's basically been just the only sound you've heard is the ball bouncing on the court. Yeah, that's the only sound you're hearing. There's no whistles whatsoever. I mean, so would you say that? I mean, what would you say if from a basketball referee's perspective? Do you think that a little bit of reputation at all?
I don't think it's reputation. I think big guys in general are just hard to officiate. It's just because they're banging and they're so physical, especially with how the game's played now. You could probably call a foul on every play. So I think a lot of it is just his size and how he plays. Like, he is always going to initiate contact. He is always going to hit that guy first. So just trying to figure out, like, what's the right amount to call. Now, I also am under the impression, I've always tried to tell myself, and now that I'm older, it's easier to tell myself, is that every official sucks. Like, let's cut to the chase. Like, they're all bad. Like, none of them are making perfect calls. They're not very good. So I'm like, all of them stink. So, it's tough at times because you're a competitor, you're in the moment, you're getting hit. But I do think he gets looked a little bit different because of how big he is. And, those big guys like a Shaq or, used to get mauled and they wouldn't call it because they don't give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, if DJ was, 6'9" and 150 pounds and, they flick him and he'd fall on the floor, guess what? He'd probably get a lot more calls, but that's just not the case. So I think a lot of it is just, how big and physical he is. And, sometimes they don't give it to him because of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's because it doesn't look like a foul on DJ just because he can absorb the contact so easily and still finish through it. But like, it's still a foul. But
yeah. And that's you see the guards like whipping their head back and forth, and it's just sometimes you got to turn into an actor sometimes.
Well, and by the way, Sky, like, do you think that now? Like, when you're recruiting somebody or you're evaluating somebody in college basketball, like, do they have like the frosted tips hair? Because I feel like that frosted tips hair is speaking about no specific player that I'm mentioning, but I might have one in mind that just like when they do that flip, it just like the hair just goes perfectly and it really
it's
just
a highlighter.
It is a highlighter of every foul,
And that's
like you couldn't get the calls, guy, like with your look than you could with the frosted tips, man. Like, imagine how many foul calls you would have gotten if you had the frosted tips, bud.
Well, I talked too nasty to officials, so I wouldn't have gotten any calls anyway. But again, it's just the game has changed, especially on the perimeter. I would have liked to have played in today's game because I feel like I'd have probably actually got a couple more calls. But I just the big men is the ones that I wouldn't go anywhere near there, dude. You could hit somebody across the head and knock them out, and it wouldn't even be a flagrant foul half the time. So it's just one of those things, man. It's hard to call. It's a fast-paced game.
Mm-hmm.
The athleticism's only getting quicker. They're jumping higher. So, you could call as much as you want or you can call as little as you want. I think DJ's just one of those guys that, it's no fault to his own, but he's a hard one to call for.
Yeah, agreed. So now looking at a little bit of the rest of the season here, they face they go to Clemson here coming up here this weekend, which will be a tough test for sure, and especially for the bigs. Again, PJ Hall is, I mean, he's one of the best centers and definitely in the ACC, if not the country. So it'd be a tough challenge there, but and you still got to go to UNC. You still got Duke coming to Raleigh on March 4th. You still got Pitt as well. So like, it doesn't get any easier. And so, what do you think needs to happen, Scott, in order for us to have a shot to make the tournament? Like,
they got to win. They got to win first and foremost.
Win.
Now, see, the one nice part with everything you said is like, most fans are like, oh, at Carolina, dude,
we need it.
Clemson, we got to have it.
Well, yeah, we need it.
That's the one nice thing we have is that our non-conference was so bad and we didn't capitalize on anything. But now you actually have a shot down the stretch. If you can knock off a few of these teams, now all of a sudden you're in a good spot.
Uh,
But again, we keep talking about matchups today. Clemson's a terrible matchup for us.
Yes.
So that one is a big concern. I could see them, knocking off a Duke. I could see them even beating a Carolina. I see them beating a Pitt. They should have beat Pitt the other day at home. So honestly, the one question mark, and I said it on Law to Wolf, I think Clemson's a must win. I think somehow they're going to have to get it. I think DJ is gonna probably have to be more limited minutes. I think Middlebrooks and Diarra are gonna have to have big games because of the way PJ Hall can pick and pop. He can go down to the post, so they're gonna have their hands full, and they're going to Clemson. It ain't gonna be easy. So it's gonna be interesting, but I think that the first one is we got to be able to get that one. I think after that, you got a couple winnable games, and then you've got some tough ones down the stretch.
You had a week to rest. You had a week to scout, and you really got to set the tone because those next 3 games of Syracuse, Boston College, and Florida State, you can't lose one of those. Like you got to win all 3 of those, and if you're going to win all 3 of those, you got to be Clemson. Because it's just so. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, I think it starts with the Clemson. If you don't beat Clemson, you almost have to win out. Like nobody wants. You don't need to be putting any added pressure. That's why I think if you get Clemson, there's some room for air going down the stretch. Virginia has turned it on, which is going to help you with your net. So there's a couple ACC teams that all of a sudden have started to kind of creep back up there. Wake's another one who's playing really, really well. So to me, you got to get that Clemson one, and then it gives you a little bit of room to, absolutely screw something up down the stretch.
Yeah.
I love how like it was like setting up to be such a positive comment there, Scott.
He said absolutely.
Yeah,
but hey, listen, I've prepared myself. It's coming. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
Scott, and again, hey, listen, I mean, for me, I do most of the tweeting for Tuffy Talk, and can't remember which game it was, but it was a couple weeks ago, and I remember like I literally did not tweet the entire first half because it was just disgusting. And literally halftime, I literally
Syracuse. That was a bad one.
Probably Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse. That's right, Syracuse. Yeah,
Virginia. One of those. They were both bad.
Yeah, they were both bad. And I literally tweeted. And I just said, my mom taught me growing up that if you have nothing nice to say, just don't say anything at all. And that's really all. That's just all I tweeted. And so I mean, even for us who just like you, Scott, are always pushing positive. Because then at the end of the day, like you look at all around NCAA athletics, there's a ton of good things going on right now between women's tennis beating UNC, gymnastics breaking out, women's basketball is looking really good, baseball starting up tomorrow, like there's a lot of good stuff going on. But at the end of the day, I mean,
I think
it's tough. It's tough to imagine having a really great stretch here from everything we've seen so far.
Well, and I don't disagree with that, but I also know that there's a lot of times as a basketball player, you go into this Clemson game, all of a sudden, what happens if you catch fire and Casey knocks down 6 threes? DJ Horn is feeling it, and now all of a sudden it brings a whole different dynamic. It can turn as quickly as it turned the other way, and I think that's the beauty of basketball. Is now, if I genuinely thought they were a bad team, I wouldn't say this. Like if this was Louisville, they ain't just gonna turn it on and win 5 straight games. They just ain't good enough. But
what? Hot take, Scott.
But I think this team actually they have pieces there now. Do I think they're offensively gifted as a Duke or a Carolina? No, but I think they have pieces there that can make a good enough run that gives you a better seed in the ACC. Make a 2-win game, 3-win into the AC tournament, and then maybe play yourself into an NCAA game. I think that's what they can bring. But I think, again, it's got to start with they got to start getting some confidence. They got to start making some shots, because the one thing that, no fan can question is they give effort, especially on the defensive end. It's just sometimes on the offensive end, they go through these lulls and it starts to look ugly at times. So, I just think they got to get a little bit of confidence. That may mean, all of a sudden Casey hits 3, 4, 5 threes, and then DJ's staying steady. Jaden's getting downhill, being able to turn some guys over and get some easy ones. So you just never can tell. And if they, turn it on for the Clemson game, you could watch out. They could go on and win, 4 or 5 straight games.
Yeah. And go ahead, Michael.
I wanted to ask your thoughts on Jaden Taylor specifically, because I feel like he's been the most polarizing player, and I feel like he gets a little bit unwarranted hate at times, because I think he's an elite on-ball defender, and I think people were expecting more offensively out of him, being coming in as one of the top transfers. But if you look at his numbers, his numbers are almost identical to his time at Butler. So it's like you're getting the same output there. And I think he adds another great on-ball defender that you alongside Casey. And we've seen it overall defensively that this has been Keats' best defensive team, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think that's if I was going to be honest, in the 7th year Kevin's been here, 7th
year, yeah.
The 7th year, this is probably the team that everybody was expecting him to put together. Being able to go really, really deep, being able to have guys that can pressure the ball, send go 9-10 deep if he wanted to. So again, he's had a solid year. I think at times he gets overly aggressive, especially in the half court. But again, where he thrives is being able to hound the ball defensively, and he's an elite level transition player. So when he's able to get out and you've got, a 2-on-2 leaking out, a 3-on-2 leaking out, he is phenomenal in that area. Now, I think he can, continuously needs to grow, shooting at a high clip. He's very streaky. He's also the kid that all of a sudden you need a big shot, and all of a sudden he just hits a 3 out of nowhere. Like, where the heck did that come from? So he doesn't shy away from it. But again, for him to be able to go from the Big East, which is still a very, very good basketball conference, to bring it to the ACC and still have same numbers going from his freshman to sophomore year is really, really good. So, he's overly aggressive at times, but I also think what he brings, especially on the defensive end, to me, honestly, should outweigh a lot of things that he does on the offensive end, because he changes the game in so many ways.
And I also think if you're getting the same offensive output from Casey and Burns that you got from them last year, it probably wouldn't be as big of a deal. With them struggling, it's like, okay, who's gonna give us some more on the offensive end? And
I learned a long time ago, it's hard to please everybody, man. He's had a good season. I've always said I think NC State deserves and needs to be in the tournament every year. That's just kind of how I've always viewed it. That they may not make it this year, but I still do think that they have some pieces there. We just as a staff, I'm not on the staff, but I'm talking as if I was on the staff. But a tweak here or there, and a win here or there. All of a sudden they get Wake, they get Pitt, and we're sitting 4th in the ACC. It could have very easily gone, a different direction. But again, there's still a lot of games left.
Yeah. No, absolutely. and I mean, Sky, while you're dealing with your kid coming into the room there, no worries.
She's got the cookies all over her face.
Let's go.
There you go.
Say hi.
Hi.
Say go pack.
Go Pack.
All right, can you go upstairs real quick so I can?
Hey, her wolf is phenomenal. That is a phenomenal wolf hand right there.
Good form.
Phenomenal wolf hand. Indeed. Her daddy taught her well. But yeah, no, and again, Scott, obviously we're in that, we're in that phase right now where, there's talk about, Keats, and, is he the guy for next season going forward? Which I'm not going to say here because, first of all, again, like I feel like that kind of talk is, again, it's like you're talking as if season's over, which again, there's still opportunities 100% on the table right now. So I'm not really going to get too much into that because, again, I want to see how the season plays out. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, we got to get to the point where eventually the NCAA tournament is not a goal; it's a byproduct. We got to get to that point. That's not a tall task, That's not a tall task.
I said this a long time. I think I was still playing professionally when I said NC State needs to be in the tournament each year, and I said 1 out of every 5 years they need to be able to make a run, whether it's a Sweet 16, Elite Eight. That's where they need to be. But again, it's also not easy. It is not easy. I had 2 years that were a struggle at NC State, and then I had 2 years that were just the best years of my life. So again, it's not easy. As it goes for Coach Keats, I've told everybody, I said, dude, you might as well get out of your mind. He's coming back. So again, it's just like NIL. Just get behind it. Just get behind it. Ain't nothing going to change. So, if he has another year after that, okay, we address the situation. But I'm telling you right now, he's going to come back. So let's just get behind him, continue to support the team. The same thing when, last year I was critical of it on social media when the attendance was bad. Yes, I get it's expensive to park there and the food's expensive and all the other things. But when recruits are coming and, they're looking online and they see that, okay, the gym's at 50% capacity, just think what Carolina women's basketball coach is going through right now. How do you explain that to a recruit? It's the same thing here. It's just when there's better atmospheres and they see that fan base is loving and passionate, even when things aren't going well. That's the hardest thing. Same thing for players. Yeah. When fans, want the players to play better during a 5-minute stretch because they haven't scored, it kind of goes, the same way. Can the fans pick them back and get them back into it? It kind of goes hand in hand. And I always said that. I said fans have more, especially with NIL, but fans have more input on recruiting than I think what they realize. And it doesn't necessarily mean the money that comes out of the pocket that goes towards a player. I just think the love and the support that they show towards the players and the coaches when things just aren't going great, that goes a long way and it has a big impact on a lot of these recruits.
Well, and obviously, Scott, I think that one of the things that unfortunately is going against Keats right now is the fact that a few of the other major sports at NC State are in a really, really hot spot right now. I mean, football is probably the hottest it's ever been in the history of the football program right now. So right now, if I'm saying if I have, a wad of cash in my hands and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it, I look at football and I say, they went 9-3 last year. They have a Ohio State wide receiver they got coming. They got one of the top quarterbacks coming in. They, they're bringing. They still have Kevin Concepcion. Or I can give the money to men's basketball that has had basically no injuries, that hasn't had a quad one win this year, that is struggling just to make the tournament. And so it's like, okay, well, which one, one's absolutely banging on the door of AC championship, literally with a sledgehammer, ready to kick it in. They are ready for it. And all he needs is that one little push to get it through. But then with men's basketball, it's like, man, we're what step are we on? Are we on step 1A, step 2? We're still so far away from where we need to be as a program. So it's just,
well, our feet are probably staggered on the steps. I can tell you that we don't have the right feet on both feet aren't on one step. But and again, I think that's kind of the beauty of it. Look, there's always going to be diehard football fans. There's always going to be the diehard baseball fans. There's diehard wrestling fans. There's diehard cross country and track because of how well they've done. I think that's just the beauty of all of it. I love basketball. I hope they always find success. I've got season tickets to the football games. Elliot Avent is my favorite coach. I tell everybody to this day, he's my favorite coach, and I never played for him.
Yes, sir. Oh no. And there goes Scott as we speak.
Yep.
But, you got
what back? Want to do with it?
Yeah.
Now you're back.
Yep. Sorry, you went out there for a second, Scott, but you're back.
Am I still there?
Yep, you still got us. Yep, you went out right there in a second. So you said that Elliot Davis, your favorite coach, you never even played for him, and then you went out. You still got us, Scott?
I can't hear anything. So if you guys, I could tell that the words are moving. Can you guys hear what I am saying? Is that yes?
Yeah.
I can't hear anything you're saying. Somebody called me just a second ago and it went out. So listen, I'm gonna give a final piece. That's the one good thing I'm good at. So if I can't hear you, I'll give a final piece. Listen, I think if they find a way to get that Clemson game, which is a big if, it's a bad matchup. I think there's a lot of things that can go right for NC State. But I do think this is going to be one where a Casey Marcel is going to have those 5 threes, have a big game. DJ Burns is probably going to be in a little bit more limited fashion because of the bad matchup with PJ Hall. So hopefully they get that one, and then you got 3 winnable games that they need to win, and then you find a way to knock off a Duke Carolina, and they're right back in the mix of where they need to be. So listen, you guys take it, close it out. I can't hear a dang thing you guys are saying, but I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you for all the listeners and everybody that got in the chat and asked questions. So hopefully, when women's basketball wins the ACC tournament and ACC championship, and NC State men's basketball finds a way to make the NCAA tournament, you guys have me back on, and we could talk about all the positive stuff.
You got it, Scott.
Here we go.
You got it.
Appreciate it, fellas.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Appreciate you. Yeah, y'all. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I think that was the perfect rounded up comment right there. You know, at the end of the day, we still have a few more chances to swing that hammer, and all we can do is just give it our best shot and see what happens. You know, and then once the season ends, then we'll evaluate from there. But Michael, any last thoughts here for men's, bud?
I think we beat Clemson on Saturday. I don't know how. Like Scott said, it's not a good matchup for us. We lost to them 3 times last year, but I don't know. It just feels like our backs are really against the wall here, and it just feels like a game we win somehow, and then we're still on the edge of our seats through the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, and do we see a little bit of the, I mean, Jack Clark with Clemson, he only has 3.4 points right now per game. But, I mean, is this the one he has 20, against us?
Yeah, really.
I mean, but anyway. But thank you all so much, Michelle, Hunter. Thank you all so much for tuning in here with us. Really do appreciate it. Again, make sure to stay tuned. We got some really exciting content coming up here soon. And, again, we have NC State wrestling, got baseball starting tomorrow. You got softball with their first home game tomorrow at 11. And then on Saturday, you got gymnastics hosting Clemson, as well, which is an AC matchup, top 30 matchup, actually, per the rankings. So make sure y'all go get locked in, man. We have so much NC State going good for us right now. And so make sure to go and take advantage of it. It is a great, great time to be a State fan. I can guarantee you that, even beyond just the struggles we're seeing right now from men's basketball. And then the last thing I'll mention as well is make sure, again, y'all, go ahead and get ahead of the curve. Go ahead and get your ACC tournament tickets for women now. You can buy the entire pack for like $200 or something like that, $250.
Still in Greensboro this year, right?
And still in Greensboro. Yep, exactly. Still in Greensboro, and if and I think it's only going to go between Greensboro and Charlotte, so it's never going to. It's not supposed to leave North Carolina anytime soon. But anyway, y'all. But thank you all so much for tuning in. We are excited, and again, we appreciate all the amazing support. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button, and make sure to give us a follow. Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then if you're listening to us on any of our podcast platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, you name it, please do us a big favor and leave a 5-star review, and greatly appreciate that as well. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Y'all have a great night, and we will hopefully talk to you soon with some amazing news after Saturday. Go Pack, y'all.